National Museums NI has developed a number of new ways to digitize its collections over the last few years. I'll just start by outlining them today. The first way we have of doing this is the 3D scanning of collections objects. So we have two ways of doing that, photogrammetry and LiDAR scanning. Photogrammetry is the process of taking accurate textured 3D models and maps from overlapping photographs. By taking multiple images of an object or environment from different angles and then processing it through the photogrammetry software, we can make these models. And then LiDAR scanning is light detection and ranging, and it is a remote sensing method that uses pulsed laser light to measure distances and create highly detailed 3D models. National Museums NI has an Arctic Leo and an Arctic spider, and you can see these at the bottom of the PowerPoint here. This one is the spider and this one is the Leo. The spider is for smaller objects and does slightly more accurate scans. The Leo is handheld and is for larger objects, and still gives a very accurate scan, but maybe not quite as accurate as the spider. And then here I have a picture of our photogrammetry software, which is a reality scan. Some of you may have heard of this. It's through Epic Games, actually, are in charge of that. And you can see that I have scanned one of the sculptures that is placed outside the Ulster Museum, and hopefully you'll be able to make out that there's pictures taken from all sorts of angles around that in a kind of dome. So there's so I have some examples of these scans to show you, and this is hopefully it all still goes to plan. I'll be able to show you this. So that's still good. Okay, hopefully give it time to load there. There we go. So this is a boat from our maritime collections. We actually scanned this at the request of the University of Ulster, who we were in partnership developing a maritime trail app that you can actually download at the moment. And if anybody has any other questions about that later, I'd be happy to provide answers. But no, how do I get the PowerPoint back? There we are. Okay. And then we have this propeller, which is currently sitting outside the transport galleries in the Ulster Museum in Cultura. And both these objects have been scanned using photogrammetry, which is essentially just taking a lot of photographs of them. If I had the correct mouse, I'm sorry, I'm just working with the pad at the moment. I'd be able to zoom in and show you a bit more detail on these, but I will pass the PowerPoint on to Hannah later on, and she can send it out as well. So moving on to our Arctic examples, we have a Jesus statuette, which is scanned from our folk collections here. And this is, we had a request to scan this from our folk curator. She was looking to maybe take these and print them out and put them in in some of the folk houses in the Ulster Folk Museum, and they would provide a wee bit more hardier examples that could sit in the rooms. But we'll come back to that later. So and then you can also see this one here, which is a butter print, and you can see the accuracy that it's picked up there. Some materials scan better than others. 3D scanners generally have a problem with anything that's transparent or shiny. So they do. And then this one is a object from our American folk park collection. And it's this doesn't actually show you the real size of it. It's quite a large object, but this was done with our Arctic Leo. It's a relatively simple scan, and it's quite easy to knit together. But if you were to get in closer, you would see a few more of the details. So yeah, that is the first level of our 3D digitization capabilities, and then the second level is our Matterport camera. Now, our Matterport camera is essentially, sorry, drop notes. It's a camera that spins around on top of a stand, and it uses these basically 3D dome of photographs to create digital twins of interiors. So I have some examples to show you here, but we can use these 3D tours of exhibition spaces, buildings and stores, and you can supplement them with tags of, say, photographs, YouTube videos, or even the Sketchfab links that you saw in the previous one. Again, this is gonna take us out of it, but this should give you a good overview of one of the houses. This is the rectory in our folk museum, and as you can hopefully see here, we're able to move around the building into different rooms and just have a tour of the building digitally. I'll show you one of the other ones here as well. This is a gallery from the Ulster Museum, and it has some of the tags added into it here. So these three here are YouTube links for what plays on that screen over and over again. I'll not click on those because it'll maybe slow the whole thing down. But you can see here that I have, hopefully, you'll be able to see it. Maybe we come back. Nope. Oh, maybe it did. It almost worked there. So that is a 3D scan of one end of that boat. So it is. And I'll not go into that because that will slow things down. And then you can see we've added photographs and a bit of information to this object. And then this one as well. And again, you can just move through this gallery, get closer looks at the at each of the objects. This one should bring up a 3D scan. And another note to say is that I've made, if you can see me at the moment, I'm holding the 3D printout of that 3D scan. So that's just another example of something you can do. And it rather neatly brings me on to the third page. Oh, actually, sorry, there's a video, which I've forgotten I put in there. So but it shows you one of the other houses there, so it does. But yeah, so the next capability that we've developed over the last few years is 3D printing, and you can see three examples here. So we currently have an Elegoo Jupiter SE resin printer, and resin printers use a UV light source to cure layers of liquid photosensitive resin. They typically provide better, smoother models than the filament printers, which you might see. They generally have the spool of the plastic, and it feeds into the 3D printer thing here. And these 3D printer objects have, we've printed, I've shown you three here. One of which is a Mary statuette, which is similar to the Jesus statuette we were talking about earlier. This was the one that we elected to print out. This is it before it's painted and put out onto the into the houses, and then the other two items are also pre-painted, although the middle one was specifically the printed. We chose the print color beforehand, and we were able to do that with another printer, and I printed out this Bronze Age pot for our archaeology team. The clay pipes that you see in the other one are a more recent addition. We've done a number of those, and one of the curators in the American Folk Park in Oma has asked for them to be painted white, and then he plans to leave them throughout the museum because they're period specific to the houses, so they are, and just add a little bit more color. And also they'll not be damaging actual clay pipes, which are quite fragile. So yeah, that's just examples of, well, examples of 3 of the ways that we have been 3D digitizing over the last few years. And then I'll just talk a wee bit about how we've used these to apply the things. So I'll stop sharing because you don't really need that at the moment. So the first way in which it's benefited the museum is preserved objects. Objects that are 3D scanned are digitally preserved in a detailed and non-invasive manner, which allows staff to check the condition of objects and easily share with colleagues for more in-depth analysis. Some examples we've had over the last few years is our conservation team has asked for scans of items at different points. So one time we got this cauldron that had been found in a bog and we scanned that beforehand before it had been cleaned and stuff like that. And then our conservation team cleaned that all up, and then we scanned it again to show what it looked like once it was ready to go on display. So we always had a record of it, how it arrived in the conservation studio. One of our more interesting recent things is that we have a garment that's due to go on display next year in part of an exhibition, and it's missing some buttons, and the buttons have been 3D scanned, and then we're going to 3D print them out, and hopefully they'll be painted and made to look like the actual buttons, so that you can get a more complete look at the objects. So those are some of the things the ways we just use it for preservation and conservation. It also, in terms of like the Matterport scans, they're excellent for use of access to the exhibit buildings and exhibitions whenever maybe it might be a little bit more difficult for a curator to go down to the building. Instead of doing that, they can check how things were on a specific date and time by going to the Matterport scan of that particular building that is on record for us, and they can see whether certain items are there, and they check the condition of the building in certain respects. So we found that quite useful. In terms of accessibility, models can be shared online to a global audience, making them more engaging than with the photograph on a website. Visitors with mobility issues can use Matterport scans to experience areas of the museum they might find it difficult to access. This is especially true in the folk museums that we have in National Museums NI, as those houses were never designed to accommodate people who require assistance, and it would be impractical and not quite true to the houses and the museum's ethos to make those adjustments all the time. 3D models can be also used to create physical replicas using the 3D printer, and these can be useful tactile objects that can be handled when the real object would not normally be permitted to be handed out. So some examples of that are we've Matterport scanned our Titanica gallery, which is a huge thing for our Transport Museum. Means that people can see what we have in our gallery before they come to visit, or if they want a reminder after being to visit, or if they can't come at all. The same is true of the Inclusive Global Histories gallery, which you've just been shown there, and another exhibition in Oma called Bad Bridget. And these have all been put on our website so that visitors can digitally visit the gallery anytime they like. Another way we've used Matterport scans is of our event areas that have so that we can send them out to people who are prospective customers for our event, or say they were people who wanted to have a wedding in the cultural manor or in the open spaces of the Ulster Museum. They can see that space before booking it. Say if they couldn't make it down and there was maybe a lot of competition over a particular date. One of the most recent things that we've done is we've created 3D replicas from our 3D scans of some items on our Egyptian gallery in the Ulster Museum, and they have been put into the gallery in the Ulster Museum, and now those visitors can touch and feel and see the objects they wouldn't normally see except behind glass. Our education and outreach teams have used all the functions. In fact, they're probably one of the biggest. That's where the biggest uptake has probably been. They've used the Matterport scans and 3D models as part of their online outreach classes, and these resources have been found to enhance engagement with the participants ahead of 2D digital offerings. While prints have and while 3D prints have allowed in-person participants to handle objects they would not have otherwise been able to. An example of that would be the American Folk Park has used extensive use of Matterport scans of the buildings to share them with online research and school groups. They've also supplemented the scans with a range of media, including 3D scans, allowing groups to explore a more curated selection of objects relevant to the lesson in space. Teams at the American Folk Park and the Ulster Museum have also used 3D prints to supplement their outreach boxes and educational classes. Participants are able to handle objects they would not otherwise have been able to, much like the previous example. And our educational colleagues are also able to share scans with teachers, allowing them to plan their school visits. They're like their route through the museum and stuff like that. And finally, research. Researchers can have unlimited access to digital replicas rather than the real ones, allowing them more time to study them than normally possible. This can lead to more in-depth analysis and notes. They can make their notes at leisure with no restriction on the researcher's time. We had a big project recently where I scanned a lot of elephant bones for a PhD student at Queen's University who was working with our natural sciences curatorial team. There's potential there for other uses as well that haven't explored as of yet, and like definitely be open to them. That's pretty much everything I had written down here. I hope that wasn't too bad, but like I'm happy to chat away about our experiences and just discuss.
Wow, that's brilliant. Thank you, Stephen. That was a tremendous amount of work that's obviously going through the processes with a range of different techniques. I don't know if anyone has anything they'd like to ask while we've got Stephen here, and or any experiences that they might have to share about how they're using 3D digitization or scope to do so in their own museums or sites.
I I see that Jamie has asked what photogrammetry software we use. We use Reality Scan, which you can download via, I think it's Epic Games, kind of like download. I'm not really sure. The IT guy set up the account for me, so he did. But I do know it comes from Epic Games. It used to be called Reality Capture, and now it's called Reality Scan. We've also used Agisoft for that as well, but I've had some training on Reality Scan now, and I find it to be a better fit for us.
Fantastic. And there's a question in the chat about using resin for public handling and how robust and durable that is and toxic.
Yeah, I think that's that is still an issue in terms of the process of it being printed off. You have to, there has to be a good deal of ventilation, and the objects need to be properly washed and cured. But once they're painted and ready to go, I don't think the handling it is an issue. We've definitely looked at that.
So the process to get you to the is perhaps something that needs to be carefully approached by the sounds of it.
Yeah, it does. I mean, you definitely have to have like an established workflow for the printing of it. So you do, and be aware of some of the things that can go wrong. I mean, like whenever I'm going through the printing process, I will wear gloves, and we have a ventilation system in place within the actual 3D printer. The one that we have has a wee air filter in it, so it does. But the issue with the shattering or them being dropped, it's I think that can depend on how you cure it, because how you cure it depends on can develop the flexibility of it. So if it's cured for too long, it can become brittle and it can shatter. And then that's that it could be an issue then. But I think well, I know that we have the right balance with us now, because we're good to go, and the guys have been able to use them, so we have.
And I guess the thing with it potentially shattering is that it's a replaceable version of the thing, which maybe probably comes on to Peter's query about costs and the like. But I guess it gives it that opportunity to go out and about in a handling collection that you wouldn't send the original object.
Yeah, I mean, like in terms of the equipment, the Artec stuff, I believe came through a grant of some sort, and that is expensive. So I don't know the exact totals, but I know it is expensive. In terms of photogrammetry, the software is free, so it is, and you can do it nowadays with an iPhone for photogrammetry. But if it does work quite well with a decent camera. I was involved in the purchase of the 3D printer, because I felt the 3D printer that we already had was incredibly expensive and wasn't giving us value for money. So we had a Formlabs 4 or something like that, which I have subsequently been told is the type of 3D printer that a dentist would have for dental implants. And I basically, the resin and the machine and basically keeping it up and running was costing quite a bit. So in discussion with colleagues, we decided to move to the Elegoo printer, and that brought our costs way down. A new Formlab printer would definitely cost £2,000-3,000, maybe £4,000. The Elegoo printer that we have was £500. Each new resin tank for the Formlabs printer was £150. the resin for the through the Elegoo printer is 20 quid. So I felt that.
And what do you get out of a resin tank, as it were? Is that one good print of something?
No, it would be
I don't know,
definitely.
so big. Or...
I mean, like I've got 20 of those pipes out of out of one of those. It's maybe like it's a liter of resin, I think. So it is. So I mean, you can do a number of prints, so you can, and it's just it works. They are. The other issue is there is a little bit of fiddling with the 3D printer, so it can resin ones can be temperamental, so they can, and so I've had to go back and look at certain things to get the right settings on it, but fingers crossed, it seems to be working for me now, so it does.
Well, I think the technology seems to be moving on in leaps and bounds. So I guess again, that's where maybe your older piece of equipment that you initially had, that things become cheaper, more accessible.
I certainly think that's the case. The Elegoo is a much more recent printer make than the Formlabs one. The Formlabs one is maybe from pre-COVID. The Elegoo one is more recent. The Formlabs one is an incredible piece of kit. It's just the running of it was, I thought it was astronomical compared to what I could get with the Elegoo, and I had this discussions with colleagues in that, and that was the general agreement to move on to this new one, and it seems to be working out quite well so far. Go ahead.
Question from Ollie about, or I don't know if Ollie's in the room, but experience of reconstructing historic 3D immersive environments using whether you've been able to use sort of historic photos or scale drawings or similar and build up from that, or whether you've tended to kind of focus in on Matterport scans of buildings and the like.
We haven't used like historic photographs and scale drawings to create a model. You would have to have a lot of photographs of a certain area, and obviously that would probably be a case with some areas.
I mean, Ollie's wondering whether it's possible. I guess that's where it sort of strays more into virtual reality, does it? I guess in terms of that. And do you need to think about your assets that you're creating in terms of those other markets and copyright and the like? Or?
Yeah, you would certainly have to think copyright. I don't see why it wouldn't be possible. So it wouldn't, but you would need a lot of photos, and they would need to be from many different angles. So they would. I do know that we have created an historic environment from scale drawings, and we have used, so I think it was I can't remember the word of it. It was like a passage tomb. So it was. So we scanned the stones that were part of that passage tomb. It had been somewhere else, and then it had been outside the Ulster Museum for years and years and years and years. Then the Ulster Museum had been refurbished, and the rock and the stones had been removed, and they wanted to set it up again in the Ulster Folk Museum. So what I did was I scanned each of the stones with the Arctic Leo, and then someone in Queens printed off each of the stones, used the scale drawings of it from the past to create a 3D model of it to ensure that it was correct. And then using the 3D model, that was built in the Folk Museum. So it was.
The reputation goes beyond, by the sounds of it. Ollie's heard of the tomb that
It's
you're describing.
I'm sorry, I'm terrible with names. So it's Bally something, I believe. So it is. I was involved in that project.
Mhm. Fantastic. Does anyone else have any questions that they'd like to come in and ask? I mean, I'm more than happy to speak from the chat, but equally, if anyone's got any queries they'd like to raise, by all means, pop your hand up, virtual hand up, and the like. There's a question in there. Oh, Peter, did you want to ask your own question? There we
Yes,
go.
well, a couple I've asked on the chat.
Mm.
One I don't think I need to talk about particularly. It was just a comment about your museum must be particularly well funded, Stephen, with the things we've been talking about, which you're no doubt very fortunate about. But you don't have to comment on that. I'm not expecting a reply. But I didn't. My other specific question was about, do you think this is something that could attract children and young people? The fact that they can get their hands on an interactive 3D terminal within an exhibition, and that will generate more interest, perhaps, than was otherwise the case.
I know that the Matterport scans and the 3D scans have been a particularly big hit with the education team, and their bread and butter is school groups. So it is it's the kids who really love that melding of the technology and the heritage. I don't think we have any on like any. No, we do. We have used it in. We have one scan on a QR code in the Transport Museum that shows you the interior of a caravan, and I believe that is very well. Like I can see some of the records behind these things, but obviously with people generally choosing to turn off cookies and stuff like that, the record, the feedback or the analysis that these websites provide for us is limited nowadays. But I can see that particular scan is well used. Whether that's by children or not is I can't really tell. But I do think it's a better way to show 3D objects in what is essentially still a 2D medium on screen and stuff like that. And it has been well used by the museum so far.
I think I was trying to work out in my mind whether or not this is basically an archiving and research tool primarily, or whether it's something that you're doing to attract either remote visitors or, as I was saying, perhaps people that are actually visiting and can therefore see a bit more than they would otherwise be able to do.
My answer to that would be that it's both. So it is. There are many scans I make of, say, Ulster Museum galleries, and they're archived for our records. We wouldn't put them up on our website because we simply don't have the copyright permissions to do so. But it is also an interactivity outlet for our museum as well. And to be honest, like I'm not sure we make a lot of use of these things, but there are further uses you could make of them. I know for a fact that our facilities manager was quite interested in them, and he has access to them because he can see on them where certain pipes lead within the museum, and that gives him an awareness of things if things break or they need fixed or stuff like that. Our design teams use them to see what they've put in previous versions of the gallery, stuff like that. So they're well used throughout the museum, and they can be to a certain extent all things to all people. Certainly the Matterport scans anyway.
I know, just an example in Norfolk, we've had Norwich Castle was scanned as part of Google Maps, so you can kind of take your street view through there. And I've definitely used that to double check what type of door there is between certain sites or similar, just when you're not on site. So yeah, from a facilities management perspective, there are other options. I'm intrigued to know that you mentioned sort of, there's one example where you put a QR code. So quite often there's sort of almost like a disconnect between visiting the museum and experiencing the museum there and the kind of the digital version of the museum that might be sitting on a website.
Yes.
Do you have some of those scans available to kind of control within the gallery, to any touch screens within the gallery spaces, or is that?
No, not at the moment. I mean, I think there's probably a funding thing there that like the QR code was a cheaper option than the than the screen. I think maybe both those options were discussed at the time, and they went with the QR code, and I don't know.
I guess minded that most people have got access to a device on them.
Yeah, I mean, like
within their group that.
As far as I'm aware, most iPhones have QR readability built into their cameras. Now, QR codes obviously went through a bit of an explosion during COVID, whenever people didn't want to touch things as much. I think that's why they settled on the QR code. And again, it is a funding thing. I cannot speak on how well the museum is funded in comparison to other museums, but I do know that there's always need for more. So there is, and I'm sure that's the case for all of us.
Richard.
Hi, sorry, my video isn't working at the moment. It's Richard Smith from Bevenson Museum in Dorset. Your Matterport scans look great, I have to say. I'm really jealous of those. Do they work outside as well? We're thinking about maybe scanning a quarry which has got a lot of fossil layers in it. I'm just wondering whether that's going to be something we could do with that.
Okay, so the Matterport camera that we have, I would say no. So I would, I think it is a Matterport 2 camera. However, I have been pitched by the Matterport people that the Matterport 3, which is their newest version, and one of the things that they did mention when they pitched it to me was that it works much better with outside areas.
Okay.
So that is a possibility. Simply, if you'd be able to find their website if you just type in Matterport. Okay. We have found them extremely useful. I have tried to make scans of our narrower outdoor areas, and it has been a difficulty. So I would say that the version that we have certainly isn't up to a quarry. But the third one
is that where kind of
interesting.
Photogrammetry might come in more, Stephen, or
essentially, I think what the Matterport is just another version of photogrammetry. The camera essentially, when you look at it, and you might see this if you do look it up. It's basically a black box, but there's like a camera here, a camera here, and a camera here, and it spins round, and so it's taking photographs there, and there, and it just creates a dome. And then obviously they're taking that information and making the 3D, the basic 3D model that you see whenever you're like first zooming in to the scan. The more that it has, the more stuff that it has to latch onto, the easier it is for them to knit together. Now, the Matterport 2 sometimes has problems knitting things together whenever something is more than like 5 meters away from your previous scan. So you do have to keep them relatively close together. And when you do have like an open area above it and it has nothing to latch onto above, then that causes it to struggle even more. However, as I said, they had told me that the 3 was a bit better at that. Whether it would be able to do a quarry, I couldn't speak to that.
Well, that is very interesting. I mean, I think we've been toying with the idea. We're probably at your level 1, we do photogrammetry, and we got a grant, and we bought a fairly small little 3D scanner for near-infrared scanners as well. And one other use you didn't mention that we've been making use of is to use the scans to go to other museums who have objects from our area, which they either for whatever reason don't want to loan to us, or you know, they just want to hold on to. So we have now completed some of our stories, our local stories, by going and scanning other items. And so we went to the Ashmolean and scanned a Roman sword there, which was great. I mean, it's lovely to be able to do, because you can, as you say, you print it, you paint it, and it looks pretty decent, really.
Yes, that is something I forgot to mention earlier. I don't do the printing and the, well, sorry, I do the printing. I don't do the painting of these objects. I have a colleague called Stefan, sing his praises all day. He does beautiful work. This is, he painted this after we printed it out, and like it almost looks like the real thing. Obviously, I've seen the real thing. You're only seeing it through the screen, so
Yes.
I can only repeat. But like, we're very lucky to have Stefan on staff, so we're
Okay, thank you.
Fantastic, thank you, Richard. Does anyone else have anything else they'd like to question, to raise, to share with the group? If not, I will pull this to a close. Say another big thank you to Stephen for all his time this afternoon, and for sharing his experience of working with 3D digitisation. And just to remind you that our next Chewing the Cud will be here again in a month's time. So we're meeting on Tuesday, the 21st of October, again at 3 o'clock, and looking at flax production. So completely different yet again, but that's one of the joys of our Chewing the Cud session. So hopefully you can join us again for that. Again, thank you, Stephen, for your time, and thank you everyone for joining us this afternoon.